Hi there and welcome back to the Fuse Show. Today I'm joined by Philippe of CrowdSec. Philippe graduated in 1999 as an IT security engineer from EPITA in Paris, France. He then went on to found his first company around the same time and quickly oriented it towards penetration testing and high security hosting. He was also deeply involved in Magneto's community creation and animation in France and versed in e-commerce. He's even written 4 books on the topic. In 2020, he founded CrowdSec, a company editing an eponymous open source, massively multiplayer firewall, leveraging both IP behavior and reputation to create a community and tackle mass scale hacking problems. His crushes will forever be IT security, security ops, and entrepreneurship. Thanks for joining us in the show.
My pleasure, David. My pleasure.
So you mentioned that you just love entrepreneurship. How early did that start in your life, and how did you know that was like your calling?
Yeah, it was really cool. You're right. I mean, I was talking to my parents when I was 16 years old, telling them that I would totally see myself as an entrepreneur. So they made what every responsible parent would do, saying, finish your study first, right? And then we'll discuss about it. So I made my studies in EPITA, which is an engineering school. So we're back now in 2000, right? So everybody is paid a hell lot because it's a 2000 bubble. There's not enough engineers anywhere, we're not anywhere near the quota needed. And I say I say to these wonderful salaries, no, thank you. I'm going to create my own company, eat, very standard pasta for 2 years, and barely pay myself. So that was a weird choice at first, but I knew that it's something you have to do very early on if you can, because later on it's way more complicated. You have family, loans, mortgage, and stuff. You have constraints. You're not as free as you are, just when you're exiting your studies. So, yeah, it started at 16, and I really literally made my first company right after the school.
And for a little bit of background, what do your parents do, and how did that influence your decision about entrepreneurship?
Actually, funny enough, they were absolutely not related to this field of work. My father was a doctor, generalist, so in a small city, a small village, and my mother was at home taking care of us. So we had a great opportunity to see and look around us, the world, and get an international education and all. But as such, my parents were not deeply entrepreneurs. But now that you mention it, I realize that in my family and part of my family, all the others nearly are entrepreneurs. My uncle, aunties, cousin, and all. So it seems maybe there's something in the genes. I wouldn't know about that.
Did you ever get advice growing up to become an entrepreneur, or is that something like you felt like innate to you, independent of those influences in your family?
No, I mean, actually, one of the things that motivated me a lot is freedom, freedom of thinking, freedom of doing, freedom of, of all sorts. I knew it would be a complicated, eventually cluttered path where you would have to fight your way in, but I was fine with this. I told myself, okay, 24, 25, you've got time. Worst case scenario, you fail and you can, bounce back to your career. But no, not direct, no direct advices, no direct mentor, and I missed that honestly. So now I'm doing a lot of mentorship, and I'm helping a lot others to create their own company or have the mindset. Even my employees now, I tell them, I make them like courses, crash course studies and stuff around economics and how to create a company because I think it's our legacy. It's up to us to do this to help them, start this.
So when you first started your first job, you also found your company around the same time. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I was 24, just at the exit of my studies, actually.
How did you balance those two in terms of time and sanity?
Well, the school I made was smart enough to let us be entrepreneurs as much as we want. So they said for your end training period, you're supposed to go into a company and spend like 6 months in this company and learn your ABC there. Thing is, they told me you will do 9 months instead of six. You can dedicate 3 months only to the regular project you would have to qualify your study, but you can spend then 6 months is creating your company, and you will have a separate track for the evaluation based on company creation, and you will explain us what you want to do, why, and how. So honestly, the the school made a lot for us and let us be entrepreneurs, want to be entrepreneurs, and test ourselves. And it was a brilliant decision of theirs, because now I think we're something like probably 1,000 entrepreneurs coming from this school. So by being entrepreneur friendly, they helped a lot, really.
And how do they evaluate, I guess? So I think entrepreneurship is one of those weird things where it usually takes a while for like initial traction. So how does a school evaluate whether you're like a good entrepreneur or not?
It's hard for them to say. What they know by then is that there's a huge demand, and that I'm adventurous enough, and that I will make my connections. But they didn't really come from the school as such, because in the school you get teachers and students, so likely not customers. So what happened is, when I went out of school, I started in a very, very, very slow motion. We were three of us, and it took us years to start to kickstart. We had no growth hacking trick. We had no deep connection to the market, or deep pockets, or whatever, to make advertisement. So basically, it took us years to really start off, to take off, and we realized quickly that doing these missions one after the other, pen testing, it's cool, but you have to hunt every other day some new customers. So basically, no recurring revenue was a very, very bad model by then, extremely bad. So we decided to create a product, and just to have something that would be half recurring somehow. And we were by then located in a company doing trading, on financial markets. And what they were doing was really interesting to us, and we had two separate floors. We were on the upper floors, and they were on the lower floors. And we started to click together, and we were like, but you're doing a job that machines could do, right? Because you're analyzing curves and tracing train lines and supports and stuff like that. It's called technical analysis. So why is it not a machine doing this for you? And they were like, well, yeah, smartass, you're not the first one saying this. Guess what? Nobody did. Right? Bloomberg tried, they did not, and many others tried, and they did not provide any meaningful tool. We're like, really? That's something we can tackle. So on this side, we decided to. It was very pretentious of ours, actually, because it's a really complicated problem. So actually, we solved it, but it took us, a year and a half, something like this. And we spent most of what we had as pairings with the company, and we created a product called Train Lines, and this thing actually worked. It worked pretty well. Actually, we could prolong channels, have this resistance and support zone, make all the classical analysis, and we would show the trader only the meaningful stuff that he was looking for, like some parameters in the stock market. And it worked. So the guy said, you know what? Go. You've got my blessing. I'm going to introduce you to major tier one customers like trading desk, right? We're like, wow, fantastic. So we went there, we installed the computer, and we trained the trader on the software. And we're like, wow, that's impressive. It's still buggy beta, but it's still impressive. I came back to the office, and I saw those 3 planes crashing into towers. I was like, what's happening? And you're in a trading desk, so they have huge screens. So you see those oversized jets crashing in the twin towers. You're like, what's this? It's stunning. And you realize the economy is screwed up. Like, it takes you like half an hour listening to the guys going ballistic, selling everything they can, watching the stock market crash like hell, and you're like, oh, damn, that doesn't look good for us. And it did not, so we crashed actually with the World Trade Center.
I noticed that you used the word we versus I. What is we, how many people was we?
This we was about like 4 persons by then, very talented guys. We had to disband this unit, and we restarted from ground up. So we had to pay our debts, because we had debts to create this software. So we paid our debts, and we switched a bit the model. We were like, okay, hunting every other day, the new contract is not so safe for us. Besides, we are not really good at this, so we're not really salesperson. So we decided to work with our existing customers. Okay, since we're doing pen testing and you know us for that and we're good at that, why not trust us into hosting defensively your machines and have high security hosting as much as we can? And some of them were like, yeah, that sounds good. We'd like that. So we started to have 1, 2, 3, 4 servers, and things get rolling, you get recurring revenues, and you start building up a different strategy. And we switched to 90+% recurring revenues. Pen tests shrunk a lot in terms of incomes. And at some point later on, we are in 2014 or 2012, we decided to create the first high security environment for hosting. Sounds like it's very late. It sounds like it should have been done way before, but actually it was complicated and nobody had a real good solution for that. So we came up with a solution, built some more monthly recurring revenue, and got acquired in 2016.
So why is it so rare, or why do you feel like it not exist prior?
Well, that's the point that I could advise anyone. Start marking a path, a line in your career. Be good at it. Know your network, know the professionals, know the customer, know everyone around that. And you will start to see things appearing, like loopholes, things that have not been covered yet, mistakes or stuff that are that should be on the market but are not. And the more you dig into a direction, the better you get at it. So if you can have a mind that is half marketing and half technical, which is my case, then you come to realize, okay, I know security, I know what's missing, I know why eventually it's missing, I know how to do it without hurting myself too much, and maybe get a profit out of it. And it's exactly what we did with this new company. When you see this opportunity, you're like, okay, so take my current company. We saw that the software was aging. The software was used a lot, but it's aging and not so well. It's 16 years old, it's slow, it's not adapted to modern environments, modern cloud. So we were like, we could redo this, right? But there's something else that we should put together is a community aspect. Share the aggressions that the machines are getting, the IP that are aggressive, share them across our network. A bit like a ways of firewalls, right? We would share aggressions, aggressive IP, instead of position, speed, and potential problem on the road. And so you bring something new, you transform an older concept, and you include it with something that is, different to make it extremely powerful. So if you look at it in another way, there were rockets shooting things in the sky before SpaceX, right? But the great concept of SpaceX is making rocket reusable. They make rockets at the basic. It's a better rocket, faster rocket, heavier rocket, whatever. But it's a rocket, right? But it's reusable. And that's a whole difference with everything that's been made before. Look at Slack. Slack connects pretty much every business in the world nowadays. But it's just a reinvention of something we had while I was studying, which is called IRC. It's just an old system that allowed people to chat together that has been reinvented 10 times ever since. But say Slack nailed it, right? It connected the dots. It's not only about talking, it's about integrating all your applications and making it API first. And that's a revolution on some old concept. We discussed together, but also the robots and the apps are going to talk with you as the same. And it's about this constant creation of value based on older concept that you renew, mixed with something totally new or totally different. And I think it's a good recipe to success.
One of the things about that concept is that the timing also needs to be right. So I used to work at Uber, and I don't even think Uber was the first of its kind. There were probably like half a dozen at least prior companies that tried to do the same thing, but the timing wasn't right. Cell phone penetration wasn't at a level where it made sense. Cellular service wasn't yet reliable. You need a massive network effect to bring two sides of the marketplace together. So how do you know as an entrepreneur that, or what gives you intuition that you think the timing is right to build a certain business around an idea versus choosing to wait or feeling it's too late?
That's a spot-on question. And if you think about it, the best example would be Steve Jobs, who is considered as one of the most successful marketeers in the world, because he was definitely a marketing guy. He tried to create this iPad 20 years before. It was called Newton, and it failed miserably, like big time. So the guy was right in absolute value, but wrong in terms of the timing. And then he reinvented the stuff 20 years after with better technology, smaller, compact, blah, 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 better screen and all. And it took off. So you're right. I mean, marketeers are often right, but too early or too late. So when do you know it's the right time? Well, in my case, I don't have any absolute recipe, but in my case, it was when people started to say, that should exist already. You're like, really? But it does not. Like, no, you didn't search enough. Okay? So I searched a lot, really a lot. I didn't find it. I was like, okay, that's the right time. It should exist. Everyone thinks it does already exist, and it does not. Or it does not enough to be an obvious thing, like Uber, So if Uber was existing but not known enough, it would not be considered a de facto solution to the problem. And you would still have a chance to get in the market. So here, everybody was like, it probably already exists. It's so obvious. You're after something that does exist. Okay, but it did not. And the way I knew it is because I'm after a network effect as well. I mean, as Facebook, as Google, as Waze, as everyone. But so this Metcalfe flow makes it so that if it exists already, it's anything but discrete. You should know about it because network effects are not discrete in essence. There are a lot of people involved, so it's on the radar. So that's how I knew it was the right time.
How many people did you interview to get that feedback in terms of, hey, I wish this existed already?
So the first point was not asking the people that I knew in security because they are like-minded. So they would, bias my marketeer view of the problem. They would drag my engineer brain into it, and I would self-convince myself, which is really bad. So I went for a friend of mine because Yoav Kuttner is a very successful entrepreneur. He co-created Magento with Roy Rubin in US. And Magento was a huge success. So we kept friendship over time, and I called him, and I was like, and he's not into cybersecurity at all. He's still into e-commerce. And I was like, Yoav, if I do this, does it talk to you? He's like, yeah, but that already exists. I'm like, sure. Drop me a name. I'd be delighted. He's like, no, it has to exist. It's obvious. Yeah, but it does not. So we discussed in and out, and then I discussed with another hosting company. And the guy is also half engineer, half marketer. I was like, would you use it? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And actually, it should be in my network already, and I know it doesn't exist. So I was like, okay. And I interviewed other people in the market, people that are marketing mainly, and we started to dig into this. And I asked always the same question. Would you use it? Does it exist? Do you know anything that is close? And then I started a list, raw, stupid Google shit with 120 different companies that would be doing similar things somehow, and never found out anyone doing exactly the same. And I was like, okay, I hold this one. That's the right one. Let's go. It's all in.
One of the challenges about the security world is I think people undervalue it until there's a problem that arises. So it's kind of like insurance. Like people don't really think about insurance unless they're forced to have insurance because it's more of a back of mind thought. But at the same time, it's the thing that prevents catastrophes. So how do you go and translate this idea of security into a willingness to pay on the client's behalf? Like getting someone to pay for something that may or may not have tangible benefits in the short term, I imagine has unique challenges.
Yeah. I mean, it's not in mankind way of thinking, right? If you look at it as a parallel, which is like climate change, something that is long term somehow. So we are not able to solve it and commit in the short term. So it's true as well for cybersecurity. At least it was. We used to have a quote which was something like, cybersecurity is the first priority after all the others. And that has held true for 20 years nearly. Now everything's changed. The market is ripe. People know that if they don't do what's necessary, they will die in a full pain, right? So, or at least really suffer a hell lot and pay something they should not pay if they did the job properly. So they start to think ahead of it. The next thing is, how do you make them pay? And that's an excellent question because the value has to be so obvious that, it's a reflex. So I'm on a model that is called the SaaS low touch, right? I guess you're all familiar with this, but just to summarize it means we don't have any sales. The product is self-explanatory, and if you like it, you can buy a premium version of it for a small fee, recurring fee monthly. It's a bit like Dropbox. I think one of the biggest success in low-touch mode was Dropbox. So you can use the free version and have 1 or 2 gig for free. And if you want to go 10 or 20 gigs, you would have to pay something like $10 a month. So this SaaS low touch mode has a lot of benefits and pros. So for example, you don't have to have sales internally. And sales are cool people, but complicated to handle. Trust me, I've been one, and I had a lot in my companies. And it's not so easy to keep their mood up, balance the salary and bonuses. Always have them on the breach of the new contract. They have to smell blood every other day. It's really specific. I prefer to do marketing because marketing is long term. Communication is long term. Yes, it's slower, far slower, but it's a wave that lasts for super long. When you start as CEO now, you will get results in the year from now. But this result will last for 10 years with the same initial investment. And you cannot really be an entrepreneur if everything you do is thinking short term. You have, as a CEO, you have to project yourself in short, mid, and long term. And as soon as you can, switch to mid and long term. Because all the decision you will do and all the difference you will make in your daily business is about you being probably the sole person in the company able to think on the long term, or mid term at least. So it's SaaS low touch for those reasons. And what we do is we say, okay, you have a free product, you like it, what do you get for $50 a month? Finally, the product is doing the job. Well, you get better security. You get to know if you've been compromised in the past, or if you are aggressing others around yourself. If you are the target of a specific attack, so you are targeted but not the others. You get to have compliance dashboards and stuff you can show to your C-level guys above you. So a lot of cool things that you can fine-tune in the app, which for $50 a month is a bargain in cybersecurity at least. And we have an enterprise plan, which is way more expensive because we have very large tier one company like GoDaddy in the US that are interested into using the product. So obviously they need more services or at least more features. And that is something we've integrated in the plan. But I don't want anything that is not scalable. That's another problem. If you want to be able to raise funds fast and be efficient at it, you have to show that your business model can scale not linearly. So for X customer, you have to have Y guy ahead of them, in front of them. Here, what we want is to be a software editor, 100%, meaning with like 30 people, we could serve like 1 million person. So to do this, you have to make arbitration. You cannot do services like integration, you cannot do consultancy, you cannot do supervision, you cannot do training and so on. So the next thing you have to do is turn those problems into a value. And how to do this? Then you create an ecosystem around yourself and tell this ecosystem, I'm a software editor 100% pure, right? So I'm not going to do this job. I'm going to delegate this job to you guys. It's all around you. It's me bringing business to you for free. You have to do a good job. This is the only thing I'm asking from you. So by getting rid of this problem, I'm creating a ring of business around myself, which pushes me forward and further. And this is doable because the VCs then they understand that, okay, it got rid of this scalability problem, right? So maybe it will be monetizing later on or 6 months further than expected, but there are no ceiling that it cannot cross because of this manpower issue.
So when it comes to marketing, I think you're definitely on the spot when the fact that you want something that lasts indefinitely. How do you know when the right time to transition from more like, I guess, outbound sales and like short term into the long term if you have, I don't know, either debt as a company or you like building the product itself is like high cost? Like, how do you know that raising money is the right solution versus, I guess, bootstrapping for longer? How do you decide that personally?
Yeah, well, a lot of people bootstrap, but I'm 46 years old, so there are pros and cons to this. The first one is I'm not here for human adventure. I've got a wife, I got a kid. Human adventure is my family, right? I don't need like a human adventure in a job. I'm delighted to work with people I like. I'm delighted to spend time with them, but I've got mercenaries. They know what they're here for. So they are paid, well paid, and we need to create a large company that will be successful. So first of all, it's a different mindset. The second thing is sometimes you need to burst, right? You want to go exceedingly fast to your target because otherwise you will get some copy me project that can nag you. So here we are after a network effect. meaning bootstrapping a network effect is extremely hard. So I know Facebook, for example, did it, but it's not so often successful. So the logical path for me was to get money to help communication and marketing to kick off and start the snowball, right? And once you're snowballing, you are spending far less money into the long-term and the mid-term adoption because it's kind of rolling by itself. And then you can spend money into creating monthly recurring revenue by advertisement or accelerating this or that initiative that you would consider critical at a given moment in time, you know, like crunching a bit on the marketing side. As for the product, my position was like, I've got a really, really good team. They are super experts in their area. So I'm trusting them 100%. So when my CTO tells me it's not ready, it's not up to me to, you know, nudge him and say, go faster, go further, go whatever. I have to handle the problem differently. So when that was obvious that we needed something like a year and a half to really create a solid, strong, a rock solid product, I thought to myself, okay, let's do marketing and burn money in marketing in the meantime, you know, brand recognition, adoption, and all. So that's why we paralyzed the effort. And when we're both ready, like the marketing has done its job and the brand is recognized, and the CTO did his job, and we have a beautiful product, then we can start monetizing.
How long was that time?
It took us something like in something like 6 months, we had a alpha product that we tested with friends. We had a beta product with 4 more months. Around a full year, we had a finalized product dry enough to be used in production. And a year and a half later, altogether, so 18 months, we now are starting to roll out our premium and paid features. So it was kind of short, but it's a very experimented team. So I would say on average, I would rather go for 2 years than 1 year and a half. So the way we rose our first funds, because I guess it's part of the next question, right? So we gathered our network around us, and that's a good growth hacking trick here. You know what? If you're a bit experimented and have a bit of network, dump this network you have and use some software that costs something like $100 a year or something like this that would retrieve the email associated with the name in LinkedIn, because most of the time you don't have the email in LinkedIn, right? So you do this with all the founders, and you will get something like, I don't know, 3,000 to 4,000 contacts. You narrow them down to maybe 200, and you say, okay, this date we'll organize our business angel round, right? So come, we'll make a demonstration of the product, we'll show you what it is about, we'll show you the plan and everything. Join us, and if you feel like, then you can, you know, step in the company. And so that's why you make one presentation, you gather all your contacts together. The ones that are interested will probably toss at you some few tens of thousands of dollars. And then you gather all of them into a holding called an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, that would take share in your company. Meaning you don't have to have, I have 17 business angels, right? But I don't have 17 people during my board meeting. I have one person that is representing them, that is the head of the SPV. And that was extremely efficient. So we gain time a lot with this kind of organization.
And how did the head of the SPV like arise? Is it just the person who contributed the most, or how was it based on democracy? How that
You know, I don't believe in democracy. I'm of the opinion of Churchill. You know, democracy is the worst governance system, except for all the others. But for companies,
Same with capitalism.
for companies, I really don't believe it's a good option. It should be enlightened dictatorship, right? So you listen to everyone. Okay. Everyone has a word in this specialty and field of expertise. You are the one to decide in the end with your co-founders. And ultimately, if you don't agree together, then you are the sole one as a CEO deciding. That's all. So as much as you can keep this way of working, it works pretty well. If everyone has a say into something, it's just the beginning of the mess. So, and I experimented this a lot. So here we had someone that organizes SPV, because it's not so easy to roll out. You know, you have a lot of paperwork, You have a lot of things to care for. And I guess in America it's the same. You have SEC that is regulating all of this so that there is not another con artist trying to, to take your money. So here is the same. And this company organized itself. I knew the guy for a while, and he said, okay, can I have a seat in the board? And obviously he has one. So he's representing all the 17 people, but I keep contact directly with them, with all my investors on a monthly basis. I send a newsletter that is, the insider thing. You go no filter. It's good for yourself as a CEO, and it's good for your LPs or associates or business angels, because they get to know how the company is doing on a regular basis. And I saw way too often tunnel effect. You put money and you don't know what's happening until the company is either broke or sold, which is not so cool. So our COO also developed a back office specifically for our partners, so that they can see the price of their share, the budget, the last decision of the board, the KPIs of the company and stuff. Whenever they want, they just have to connect. It's a real-time thing. It's dynamic. So it's really cool. And everyone said, okay, well, that's really a nice thing to have. We really appreciate. And I think when we saw then the VCs that followed us in the seeding round, they were like, wow, that's a very mature company already. You're treating your partners extremely well, and you have a view over pretty much everything. So we like it. It really played in our favor.
Is that something is that like a dashboard of sorts, something that you built in-house, or was there like a common tool that you can use?
Our COO is really good at this. He used Blocklio and automated a lot with Google Functions and Google Sheets and stuff like that. So everything is reporting centrally. He created something like, I don't know, I think now we have 17 bots, something like this, that are dealing with all the errands. Another advice here, focus on what matters. Focus on your added value. So first of all, define what is your added value, but focus on your added value, because if you are spending time with C-levels handling, I don't know, wages, reporting KPIs, budget, stuff like that, you're losing your time. This all should be automated. Fire and forget. Yeah, you will spend more time at first creating those tools, but on the long run, it's such a tremendous efficient usage of your time, because now we are not dealing with this. If someone takes a train, for example, they just scan the ticket, send it on Slack, and there's a bot catching it and putting it into the accountancy system, and that relates it automatically with our banking system. And so, and everything is then dropped at our accountant place, so that they can, make the account properly end of the month. So all of this is automated as much as we can. And if something is not, it's just because we had no time so far, but it will be soon. That's really the motto. So 17 bots are handling the daily errands.
When I talk to other founders, the most common answer I get in terms of how often they update their investors is around quarterly. What makes you
It's not
choose to
even
go
monthly,
monthly
it's
instead?
dynamic. So any of my investor can go anytime he
Okay, I see.
wants and see his dashboard being updated. So here's the point. Every quarter, the other companies would have to compare their figures, draw charts, and have their KPIs and update their budgets and stuff. Here, we don't have to do that. It's just, we go in board meeting, say, okay, let's pull the latest, and that's all. We all have it. And we have a button to just send it to everyone anytime. So it was a decision that was kind of obvious for us, but because we had someone that could do it. If you don't have someone that could do it, I would advise you to get some freelancers to do this for you, because it's such a tremendous, efficient use of your time. It's crazy. So we just decided it's being polite with our investors, if you want. They have to know where they stand. So one of them decided, for example, when we went for the seed round, that he would sell his shares. Not that he didn't trust us, because in 6 months we multiplied the valuation of the company by times 4.5, something like this. So it's extremely honest performance. But he had to create a new company. He wanted to create a new company. So he made the most obvious choice. He sold what was working, got his money out, and created another company for himself. Great, smart. So, but he knew on the spot how much he earned, what taxation he would get and all. So now this guy is still in contact with us and praising us and talking about us in networks and stuff, saying that was the best experience I ever had. So the next time I want to onboard an investor, he knows that we are, transparent, fair, and so on. So that's a real advertisement for us.
It's really cool. I noticed that on your LinkedIn, you mentioned that you have a certificate for Reid Hoffman and Chris Ye's blitzscaling. Do a lot of your concepts and how you lead your company today run from that, or is it just one of many data points you use for how you choose to approach CrowdSec?
So this blitzscaling thing, I was interested in because I was really willing to know whether we should blitzscale or not at some point. And the answer was in their training. And it was really nicely done. I had no immediate reason to do this because I had no immediate threat, right? So blitzscaling is really when you have an immediate threat or you need to accelerate fast enough not to be crushed by the others. So we had no such thing here. We had time to develop ourselves. It was part of the plan. I cannot stress how important it is to have a plan. Draw it to the latest details, because this will be the first victim of the war, right? No plan ever survived the first contact with the enemy. No plan of operation ever survived the first contact with the enemy. Any military can tell you, any CEO can tell you. But I would not get up in the morning without having a plan, because then I can adjust it, modify it, and go where I think it's good, or know when there's a discrepancy compared to what I expected and why, and analyze it. So, and also the strength of the plan and the strength of how convinced you are with your plan, it's sweating off you, right? People see you and say, okay, this guy has a plan. Whether he will make it or not, he has a plan. So he's, without any second thought, trying to stick to it and modifying just when necessary. Some VCs were scared by that. They were like, but what if it doesn't unfold the way you think it will? Will you be able to pivot or do something different or adjust? Yes, of course. I mean, come on. 25 years of experience, 50 years if you take all the founders, of course we would adjust. But if you're scared because we have a plan, you're not our investor, because it's a deep mindset for us. And the one we got here, they are like, yeah, we understand your play. We think you can do it. We would like to have our touch in this, saying maybe this is weak and you could probably deal with this a bit differently. And they were right, actually. I think they were right. We'll see. But then it's easy. You say, okay, my plan stated that I should be here. I'm here. Any question? No. End of the board. Really? I mean, and I'm like, they're not asking when do I make money, because they know when I will make money. And they're not entitled to ask if I will make money earlier, because I have a fucking plan and I stick to it.
Right.
So there's no stress here. And the day I'm not within the KPIs I gave them, they're 100% entitled saying, Philippe, maybe you need to revise your stuff. Maybe there's a problem. Can you explain around it? And I feel it's a commitment that is important, because those people, they have LPs and they have spent like millions in our company. So we owe them answers if we fail, and they owe us freedom if we succeed. See what I mean?
How often has it been that you had to, or you submitted a report where the KPI, your current KPIs, weren't in line with what you previously planned? And how often does that happen, and how do you handle it in terms of communication, and how do they respond?
So, funny enough, we had a real crisis in the early this year. We were behind. We are lagging in adoption. I was like, why? So we started to roam around the marketing and brainstorm a lot to find new communication channels, new strategy, and so on and so forth. Actually, the reality was that we were not counting properly. So we were on par with objectives, like literally one-to-one, but there was a cloud function that was not registering when two events occurred in the same second.
I see.
Right? So if two users or three or more were registering in the same second, then all the one after the first one would not be accounted for. So we were like 2,000 late, and I was like, wow, we really need to do something different, because it's really bad. I cannot live with this. We're like 20% late. It's a lot. So we started to rush adoption and make new things, and that was really good. And we started to bounce our adoption up again. until we found out that there was a mistake in the KPIs. And we're like, okay, so where do we stand now? And we stand something like 10% above our objective in terms of adoption. So I granted people some vacations, relaxation time and stuff, because there's no need to go faster even. I'm not that kind. But in the meantime, I had to explain to my associates, founders, employees, and investors that, yeah, we have an issue. So the strategy was the following. We are at the very beginning of this network effect. We are at we have 10,000 users, 11,000 users. So it's a lot, but it's still small. So you still have like local extremum effects. So meaning, if one company adopts from one day to another your software and deploys 1,000 machines, you're way above your objective. If for whatever reason there is, holidays in US and they stop deploying machines, you've got a dip in your adoption. So we started to track every event that would have potentially led to delays in adoption. We found some that were quite meaningful. You know, for example, in US, end of November, it's not easy to get people concentrated on what you're doing. You know, so and in other countries as well, in France, in Germany, which are the three main countries we're working with, there are always stuff that could slow you down. And end of the year is really a slow time. And with the COVID crisis on top of that, so we got out with it. The guy were like, okay, they scrutinized this KPI. And when we could prove that we were on track finally, they were like, okay, no problem.
What do you think would have happened if you weren't able to recover in a, like, I guess, reasonable time frame? Like, what do you think is reasonable for investors to do if, because, for example, like, I think your story is probably one of, I'm not even sure if it's a minority or majority, but there are a lot of cases where startups fail, at least in the US. 90-ish% of startups fail within the first 5 years. And how would you handle that if you were like in that scenario?
So if I was really late, for already the time frame would be something, since we're in seeding zone, it would be, I guess I would start to have rounds around a quarter later, maybe 2 maximum, so 3 to 6 months. They would start to say, you're not on the right track. So we took this investment fund because they are not the type to make a write-off, you know, say that's over, this one is failed, next. They are, they know we have a long-term plan, and maybe I should explain more about that because it makes sense for the answer, for the global answer. So I'm after a unicorn. Everybody will tell you they're after a unicorn, right? That's the goal of every startup in the world, but there's a good reason for that. If you look at Waze, it was sold because it had the real-time map of traffic all around the world, right? And Google had a heap of cache, and what they strive for is data. So they exchange heap of cache against data generator real-time. This is exactly what we're doing. We are generating real-time the hacking map on the internet. Where are the hackers, right? So that has to cost, that has a value, that has to cost something in the eyes of someone. So our end game, our play, is at some point one of these big companies will say, okay, we buy you. This gold mine is too big not to buy now, and it will be too expensive later. So
Later, yeah.
So the thing is, in the meantime, so by then, important, we won't screw our community because our software is open source. Meaning, if those guys start to monetize aggressively what we've done and what they committed for, this community, they can switch to another, they can fork it and do their own stuff on the side. And nobody would have a say in this. So they are protected. It's important to highlight that. But at some point, someone will want to acquire us. In the meantime, we will have monthly recurring revenue that will push further and further the fundraiser. If we have too few monthly recurring revenue, we will have to dilute ourselves earlier and probably for a lesser value. If we have
Right.
good monthly recurring revenue, we can start eventually get loans against them and potentially push further and further the delay which we would have to raise funds again. So basically, now that we have seeded, there's no reason we would hard crash. Why that? Because we're not after absolute monthly recurring revenue in the short term.
Right.
The play is to have $1 billion in 5 years. So They are patient, first off. Second thing is when a VC throws $5 million at you, if they have any chance of not losing it, they will do. So what they will do is help you raise the next round. Push the potato to the next guy. And that's quite classical. So maybe you won't get the best of the valuations you can, but as long as you're not a hard crash, that's fine. So here, as long as we have adoption and network of users and so on, people that trust us and businesses that want to pay, we are not really at risk. So
I see.
yeah, that's my answer. I don't know if it really fits your question.
No, no, I'm just here for any honest answer, and I think I'm satisfied with that. How do you discern for, I guess, one of the things I like to do with this podcast is to help people make the transition from corporate into entrepreneurship. And I think if you're in the right position, you have the opportunity to raise, like, and I think you've raised a substantial amount of seed funding, probably more so than most people have the capacity to do so. How would you encourage someone who, I guess, is in the early stages of their life or their career to make that jump and also be able to, without having to get stuck with the either giving up too much equity or taking on too much debt?
It's a lot of preparation already. You will change your lifestyle a lot. You have to be able to endure a lot stress. Stress is the pinnacle of your problems. You will have to do sport. You have to change your lifestyle most likely. Second thing, prepare well. When you leave your company, you will have probably no safety net. So if you can get one, create one. If you can't, at least create a huge network before leaving, right? Now, equity versus debt is, this is a bit of the Coca-Cola paradigm, right? It's better to have like 1% of Coca-Cola than 100% of my own company. So the thing is, you want to create something big enough at a rate fast enough. And if you end up having like 10% in this huge win in the end, that's fine. That's really fine. If on the other end, you're too conservative and you don't use your capital to get the funds, get the tenants, and get the speed, you will likely get stranded in the sand. And you will have 30% or 40% of your company, but the company would be much less valuable. So consider your capital, your shares, like an acceleration factor. So use them wisely, dilute wisely, and dilute the less you can, but don't hesitate to do so if it brings you some acceleration of any sort. So here, for example, after this round, I still own 35% of my company, right? So I don't have the majority anymore, which is not a problem. Anyway, people should know that you don't govern companies that do fundraisers with shares. You govern them with seats at the board. That's why the board is so important, and you keep hearing and listening about these boards, right, and board membership. It's because even if I have 35, or would I have even 60% of my company, that would not be enough to drive it 100% by myself. The board is a representative entity that decide for the company behavior based on voices, 1 vote per seat, roughly, right? And the president usually has a golden vote, like 2 votes if there's 50-50. So even though you would have, like, for example, 10% of your company, you can still be the biggest decider in your company, being the board member, the president, for example, with a golden vote and all. You can have a board that is favorable to you and vote for what you want the company to go for. So always decorrelate the shares and the votes and the governance. It's not the same. So now that we speak about shares, I would advise to keep, the tracks is like, you would dilute yourself about 20 to 25% each round, roughly. That's a good, rule of thumb. So for business angel, you drop 20% of the company. For the seeding round, you drop 20% of the company shares. You dilute everyone off 20%. So everyone goes lower by 20% in his own shares. And then for the A round as well, 20-25. And then B round and C round and later rounds, it's more complicated because it entirely depends on how profitable you are, how fast growing your monthly revenues are, and so on and so forth. So there's no rule of thumb past the A round.
You mentioned earlier that one of the ways you can de-risk yourself and I guess build a safety net is by building a large network. How would you, how have you personally done this, or how would you recommend someone do this if they are trying to build that safety net and they don't have the means to accumulate, I guess, a financial safety net?
Well, you don't have to suffer from creating a company, or there's a problem somewhere, right? You could go the bootstrap, direction. Sorry, you see, that's bootleg. No, the bootstrap direction, which is amazing. I'm full of admiration for those guys, honestly, really. But they are suffering, most of them, from financial stress above the stress you already have from creating a company. And I rather have investor stress than financial stress, you know. So I deport those from the bootstrap, financial stress to the investor stress. I have to satisfy an investor, but I know there will be food in the dish, so which is already good. So raise funds early on. If you're good enough, you think you have a decent idea and the way to deliver it, there's no reason your family, your friends, the family and friends of your co-founders, and all these people around you, potentially former customers, former boss of yours, would not invest into you. Or there's something wrong. Because if people can invest early in the company and they don't do, it's because you have a problem in your business plan or idea or whatever. Because it's always, always, always the best moment to invest when your business angel. Yes, the risks are high, but the reward is like times 20, times 30 sometimes. So if you see defiance, it's probably you have a problem with your concept. So first of all, make it super dry, super lean, super clean before even attempting to present it to anyone. Rehearse a lot and don't be alone. Never be alone. Succeeding by yourself is close to impossible. There are a few people doing this, very, very few. You're not Jeff Bezos, okay? You're not Elon Musk. We are not those guys, and it's not a problem. I'm fine with not being Elon Musk. He's admirable by many, many ways, but I'm fine not being Elon Musk. I don't want to work 60, 70 hours a week. I want to see my kid grow and so on. So have people around you that are not the same as you, because it's another problem, right? So if you're alone in the cockpit, you will feel lonely. It's a terrible loneliness, and you will suffer the stress all alone. If you are, a marketing guy, tech guy, and an administration guy, for example, or girl, obviously, organize yourself so that you cover different strengths and different areas so that you don't overlap and get to fight with each other. And you won't feel alone. So rather have someone you barely know as an associate, but being two, than being alone. And obviously, if you can, take people you trust and you like, and I would be fine working with you on the long run. Friends is not so much of a problem, I would say. I'm working with friends. I lost one friend to business over 20 years. And I have worked with probably 6 or 7 friends, dear friends. So you can work with friends, be careful, set the boundaries and the thresholds and the stuff that you should not overlap with each other. Probably be coached if you want. Get a coach to, set things straight together and understand each other outside of private life, in the corporate life. But yeah, that's pretty much what I would say about this.
What are some of the things that you did that you felt like helped you maintain friendships while partnering? Because I hear that it could go really well or really poorly, and I think if you really enjoy these friends in your life, the risk component makes people hesitant to work with their friends.
We did a lot. I mean, with my closest friend, who is really literally my closest friend, my wedding witness, the godfather of my kid, our wives are buddies like hell. So we cannot budge that, right? So we took a lot of time, something like 6 months to discuss it. Until one day he invited me in a restaurant. This is the way we do it in France. And we don't do it like in 20 minutes with one Coke Light and a salad. It takes 2 hours, And we discussed everything. Like, I'm not your employee. Yeah, you're not my employee. But when we work together, you're not my friend either. No, I'm your CEO. Right, okay. And you said all this and you verbally say it. You have to verbally say it, because the main problem we can face here is not saying it, expecting something. And something else would play out, and you would be like, it's not what I expected. Yeah, but we didn't discuss about it. So how would I be supposed to know that? So verbally put everything on the table. That should be enough. The next thing is, try to know yourself and know the other. So if you are a younger profile, maybe 25 to 30, trust me, you don't know yourself and you don't know the other, right? It takes time. Yeah, you're talented, you're full of energy and so on. You're at the peak of your knowledge and stuff, but soft skills take time, most of the time. So a coach, not a couch, a coach can help you. A couch as well, but a coach. That's the problem with pronunciation in French. It's not so easy for us either. So it will tell you, and I would advise to go for ProcessCom. ProcessCom was made by NASA with a psychologist because the guy was sending Superman, literally, and Superwoman to space. And there's no way you send the cops if something turns wrong, right? So they have to understand each other because there's no plan B. You cannot get, I'm going home. Yeah, sure, Yuri, bye. No. Mm-mm. So they come up with a methodology called ProcessCom. And this is very insightful on how to interact with each other. What is my personality? What is the other personality I have in front of me? And where are we most likely to fight or misunderstand each other? And how can I disarm that and pull the proper levers so that we put this thing in between us and we can discuss it. And it's really, really important because they can be the greatest strength and they would be the saddest of remorse if you fail to have a proper relation with them.
On top of that structure that you just suggested, are there specific books that you've read and really enjoyed that help you understand yourself or help you develop soft skills that you really would recommend?
I'm not so good at that. My coach was the best. Really, he's the one that helped me the most. And there are really brilliant guys and girls at large in this space. But there are too many people in there. So picking the right one is not easy. Some are really con artists and they don't know shit about anything. Most of them, actually, I would say 95%.
That's my philosophy too.
Yeah, and some are just amazing people, right? You can literate yourself a lot online. There, you can go for those courses of Enneagram, DISC, MBTI, 16 personalities, or this one I told you about, like ProcessCom. They have coaches that are certified, so you can go and find a list of people that are reliable. I read some books like Lean Startup, the classical stuff, they show you ways, right? But I find the most important is the economic education. Because you guys in the US have way more than we have in France, or pretty much all around the world. And on top of that, you have an instinct for business that we don't have. I don't know how to put it, but there's no one American I discussed with that didn't have like a very keen vision of what I was doing and what I could do better and what was wrong, which I didn't find in any other country. So already by default, you have quite a head start in this. So educate yourself in economy because it's all about this, what's trending, what are the good sectors, what is rising and falling, what are the good methods, and then inspire yourself from the one that made a great job in your area, because it might be a totally different strategy if you're in cybersecurity, if you're in healthcare, if you're creating a SaaS system for selling cars online, whatever. There's no universal method. So look at what they did, inspire yourself, and check also what made them fail sometime or what is their biggest regrets and remorse. Compile all of this in your mind, take time. You cannot rush this, I would say. And in the end, the path would be quite clear.
Sounds good. Well, I've been very thankful for your time this past hour. I think I've learned a lot, and I hope that our guests can learn a lot from this episode as well. I just want to make sure I end all my calls the same way, and that is, what is the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if that's something they'd like to do?
Yeah, if they want to look into our product, it's called CrowdSec. It stands for CrowdSecurity. The goal is to have, protection of each other. So it's a massively multiplayer firewall, a kind of ways of firewalls, if you want. And you can find us at CrowdSec. It's spelled CROWDSEC.net. And the product is for free. So, defend yourself for free.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you, David. Bye.